Alrighty, folks, what's going on? This is Matt here for Darkwood Linux Tech and Gaming, where this is the fusion of Linux technology and gaming. And no, this is not a music reaction video for those that flavor of reaction does not work for. This is a person's first time switching to Linux, using Linux, however you want to word that, going by their title, using Linux for the first time. So let's see what their experience is. I'm probably not going to give the typical reaction that a lot of people are going to expect because this is a person's first time going into it. So unless it's something really, really stupid, and I mean really stupid, then it's probably not going to elicit a lot of ulcer inducing, vein throbbing kind of responses. So let's get into what Homeboy here has to say.
So as someone who's always had an interest in technology, I've always thought about trying out Linux and seeing like what my other options are in terms of an operating system. And after Windows 11 came out, I really don't like it that much. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't think it's as bad as people say it is, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't like.
So currently stuck with a machine that until it gets off warranty with Windows 11 specifically, I about want to bash my head off the wall. So as an example, the network setup in the initial setup of first time boot for Windows 11, unless you input some bullshit as it relates specifically to the user and password stuff for the network, you cannot proceed until that stuff fails, unless you go to the command line and tell it to skip that. But Linux requires too much of the command line. I can't create a local user account and totally be offline. That is stupid. The almost like Microsoft prodding you to actually go along and install so they have a Microsoft account is fucking absurd to me. I cannot nuke and pave Windows 11 off that machine fast enough. At this point, Windows 10, I would care less as far as if I had to use it. Windows 11 was the fucking abomination that should have been aborted, like fucking like Windows Vista was, given how quick 7 came out. That's where I'm seeing 11 right now. Despite whatever underlying improvements under the hood, the front-facing consumer product and experience between jank and everything else that I've experienced on this machine, which is it's a 3070 Ti, 16 gigs of RAM, i7 12,000 something. I don't know. It's a 14 core processor, 6 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores. Either way, and NVMe. Either way, the experience has been jittery and garbage. But yeah, like the finger gestures are janky, and KDE is smoother. I'm just gonna say. So I totally get where he's come from about not liking Windows 11. It's fine, but there's a lot of headaches that go with it being quote unquote fine. And it's, to me, makes Windows a shitty consumer product. I will say currently the best consumer product as far as OS, I'm actually probably going to say the Steam Deck and Steam OS, because Windows is just, Microsoft has done everything they can to make this system shittier. Despite underlying technology changes, the consumer facing portion of it is crap.
I don't like how like the updated menus look. I don't like how like the new start menu is. There's just so much about it that I really don't like, and the only way around some of these things is to like pay for plugins that'll fix it for you. And as a cheap bitch, I don't want to pay extra money just to make Windows, which already costs money, better. So I decided I'm going to try out Linux. Now, there are a couple things that have been keeping me from trying it in the past. Like, I've installed it before, I've used it for a little bit, and I'm just like, nah, this is not it. A lot of it has to do with, like, the Adobe Creative Cloud not being available on Linux, and that's something I use very frequently. But then, after thinking about it a little bit more, like, when I do stuff on Photoshop or like Illustrator or something, it's either on my iPad or it's on my laptop. So it's not one of those things where like I like need it in order to like be creative, I guess.
So as far as quote unquote being creative, the Adobe conundrum is always going to be a conundrum for those in the creative field. What I would honestly say is the following. If you are stuck in the Adobe cloud for whatever reason, the Adobe sphere of things, and you are not willing, do not have the time to invest, to relearn, or are unwilling to learn new software, then Linux is not going to be for you at all. And that because that mindset, that willingness applies to any OS. iOS to Android, Android to iOS, doesn't matter. It applies all the same across the board. Having programs that are cross-platform does matter, because what I will tell you, if you're using something like, now again, this is just an example. I'm not saying it works for everything and everybody. And these are not substitutions for every situation and every user. As an example, somebody will say Photoshop and some moron in the open source community will yell GIMP. And I swear to God, I will slap them until they become a GIMP. Because GIMP is not a Photoshop replacement. It is an alternative that works for 95% of consumers and most normal end users. Professionally, it's situational. Depends on your needs. Another one, the biggest one, and for people that don't understand this, is non-destructive editing matters. Till GIMP can do that, it is not a replacement. So there's that. So generically, honestly, I usually recommend Krita because it is A, cross-platform, B, better supported, and C, well, they just actually kind of update the thing and it's kind of non-destructive. So there's that. But it's cross-platform in the fact that you can use it on Mac, Windows, and Linux. If you make the programs you use available across all the platforms that you use, the underlying OS and switching between them, just it's all aesthetics and workflow more than anything else. Again, recommendation and a willingness to be open to learning different stuff. But you can mitigate the need to learn by using different stuff to begin with. Industry standards do matter and all that stuff. But if you're going to be cheap, Adobe Cloud ain't it.
On my PC at least. And honestly, my PC I mainly use more so for like playing games and stuff anyways. So it's not like one of those things where it like really like makes a huge difference whether or not I'm in Windows or Linux. I kind of just want a solid experience regardless of which platform I'm on. So today I decided that I am going to try out Linux and just see how I feel about it. Some of the things I want out of Linux before I decide on like what distro I want to use, I want something that has like a simple desktop environment. So one of the ones that I've looked into a lot is like the GNOME or GNOME desktop environment, which looks a lot like Mac OS to me. And
so the nice thing is, I will say that it's either prior experience, because he did talk about installing Linux and using it a little bit beforehand. He's being knowledgeable. Now, you know, you'll hear UI people and say, oh, GNOME's not like Mac OS and etc. Here's the difference and why people say GNOME is kind of like macOS. macOS has a set strict of ways of doing things, guidelines, etc. Default GNOME, not distro implementations of GNOME. Default GNOME works along the same type of like human interface guidelines and all that stuff. That is the similarity. That user experience is the similarity. I'm not a fan of GNOME for me, but I can understand why it would appeal to somebody coming from macOS.
And honestly, as someone who really likes macOS, I think that one would be very nice to use. Obviously, like that's pretty much the only one I've tried before. Haven't really tried out any of the other ones that are like more like resemblant of Windows, but I want to give that a try. I want to see how it works out. I also don't want to play games with any major bugs. And I think part of what kept me from doing it in the past is that I used to play a lot of Valorant, and Valorant is only available on Windows, and I'm pretty sure that even if you could get the app running on Linux, because of like the anti-cheat and everything, like you wouldn't be able to actually play the game. But also, I don't really play that much Valorant anymore, and I guess like if I really wanted to, I could always just keep Windows installed on my computer and then just boot into it just to play Valorant.
So DRM is an issue. I'm not going to say it's not. As far as gaming on Linux, certain DRMs, like the one you mentioned for Valorant, a few others that are issues. I'll even be honest, not so much BattlEye, but easy anti-cheat's a thing that's still an issue on Linux, even with it being available. It's there, and there are games that use it that you can still actually use and play with it. One of them is called Leap, which is a multiplayer kind of futuristic surfboard team-based shooter. Fun game. I love it. But the fact of the matter is, anti-cheat can still be problematic. It is a situation by situation based. But if you play Destiny, if you play like any of the like big major titles, Linux might not be for you. I mean, you can do, but there's also like, again, it depends on your flavor of gaming. This is kind of like what I mentioned with kind of that openness. It's like, okay, well, I'm coming to this platform. What's available? And you got to keep that mindset. What's my taste, but what is gonna fit that, as opposed to like I can or I don't want to bother playing it anymore. So I'm not a Valorant guy, never have been. A lot of it has to do with just the DRM end of it. And I can't say I'm not or have not played games that have DRM. I'm just not a fan of it. And the way they go about it is just a whole level of different and not my style. But I would look for games that fit that mold, that have a player base. You've done research, I can tell. So use that research to find similar alternatives. I will always use the word alternative because it is not a replacement. It doesn't matter if it's a game or if it is a program or whatever. It is an alternative. It's gonna be different.
But it's not one of those things where it like really makes a huge difference to me anymore. A lot of the games I enjoy playing more so are like the single player games. Like I like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or like the Tomb Raider games in general. I like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I occasionally, like every 6 months, I play The Sims. And like, Minecraft. Like those are like the games I play more so. And I don't really need to worry about like the anti-cheat getting in the way. The only game that I do sometimes play, besides Valorant, that I would also need to keep Windows for is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. But that is more so like when my friends are bored and they want to play Black Ops. So it's not really like a huge factor to me because like I haven't played it in like months. And then also mainly I just want to like get away from using Windows because there's a lot about Windows I don't like. I don't like that when you search, it sends you to Bing. I don't like the Windows search in general. I'm not a huge fan of the Windows 11 desktop environment. And I don't know, I just feel like I want to try something new. and just see like what my other options are. So there are two main distros that I really looked at that I was like thinking about trying out. One of them is Pop! OS. Pop! OS is just one of the more popular ones that I've seen. From what I know, at least, I know that it's built on Ubuntu, and I feel like I've heard things about Ubuntu being very easy for beginners, and everything I've seen about Pop! OS, it just seems like it's one of those more easy to pick up Linux distros. Also, one of the nice things about Pop! OS is that it does have built-in NVIDIA drivers, which I do have an NVIDIA graphics card, so it's like one of those things where it's like, it'll help simplify the process, basically. And then the other one that I was looking at was Manjaro. Manjaro, I think it looks very nice. I think it has multiple options for different like desktop environments. Like they have GNOME, and then they also have like ones that more so resemble Windows. I think the one problem with me wanting to try Manjaro and using it like daily is that it is built on Arch, which I don't know if you guys know anything about Linux, but from what I've seen in my own experience, it just seems like it's a little bit harder for beginners, I guess. And I'm pretty good with technology, but for Linux, I'm a beginner, and I don't want to like run into a lot of obstacles. So I just want something that's simple and works and does pretty much what I want it to do. So between
we all now, some people will tell you to start wherever their preferred distro. Personally, for me, like this whole video that I'm doing right now is being done on Garuda. That's after a lot of search and experimentation. I'm not going to call it niche, but it's a smaller distro based on Arch. But that's based solely selection-wise based on my hardware. Nothing else. If it doesn't work, I move on to another distro. That's just where I'm at. Like, I have no preference. I will use Debian-based distros while I poke fun at RPM-based or, Red Hat-based distros. I'll use Red Hat-based distros. It doesn't really matter to me. As long as the distro works on the machine, I give two flying fucks about what distro to use. For people that are new to the journey, having some of the more paper cut style stuff that we as Linux users are more willing to deal with, taken care of for you, matters significantly. So people not understanding that certain things that you would need generically, if you're going to go certain routes, if you're going to start messing with Proton, and if you're going to start messing with various components that make things work. When those components are pre-installed or pre-done for you as a new user, you can still learn that there are certain components to things. And then when you change distros, it doesn't matter. But we all have our starting point, and those pre-compiled packages of distros that do that is amazing. Example, I use Garuda based on tool selection, hardware, and the fact that it is literally like 4 clicks for the most part, and I have 90% of my machine set up right after install. That is legitimately why I use Garuda. It's not about the theming or any of that. It doesn't really matter to me. So I think Pop! OS. Now, you said you like Mac OS more. Haven't tried Windows, like the KDE Plasma based DEs too much. So as far as the NVIDIA drivers being rolled in, a lot more distros are doing that than used to. That was a more of a legal reason because a lot of people weren't sure what you could or couldn't do. Pop! OS is maintained by an OEM, which is probably its biggest plus, which is Pop! OS is maintained by System 76 and is available for other distros to test on hardware. That's essentially what it is. The experience is tailored to their hardware, but they make that open to everybody because that feedback in turn helps them with part selection and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a great yin and yang kind of situation for them. Ubuntu, I like Ubuntu. I like what they bring to the community, the base, and everything else. The default experience, depending on what you do, could be better, could be worse. I would almost recommend Ubuntu Budgie over stock Ubuntu, because Ubuntu Budgie goes a little bit further than a Canonical's base Ubuntu does. Preference, I'm not going to lie, but certain things like gaming are actually brought into the fold. Something I think Canonical could actually do is implement kind of like installation profiles, content creator, gamer, whatever. And you can kind of pull those things down that you would use from the repos or the software center during install. I think that would be fucking amazing, but they don't. As a general plop on, fire up Firefox and all that stuff, it works. It's fine. It's miles ahead of Windows, in my opinion, especially Windows 11. So, again, not a GNOME guy.
So between those two distros, I think I'm going to be choosing Pop! OS. And if you're wondering what the PC I'm running it on is going to be, it is a Ryzen 7 5800X. It has a 3080, 32 gigs of RAM. It's a pretty nice computer. Don't think I'll run into any performance issues with it, but I am expecting some bugs when I'm starting to learn how to play games on it.
So as long as you keep the open mind and understand that a few different things, these are games that are not meant to run on the system you're running. These are games not designed for the OS you're running them on at all. Unless they're native, built native ports or physically supported by Proton, from a developer point of view, these are not meant to run on the OS you're going to be trying them on. Keep that in mind. Far too often do I hear people complain about game compatibility now. Before there wasn't enough games, now certain games don't work. Yeah, I don't hear that argument ever on Mac fucking OS. It's obnoxious as crap, because Mac OS, well, let's just say I literally had a MacBook Air 2015. Downloaded a game that was supposed to have Mac OS support. 32-bit, so guess what? 64-bit only. Downloaded Steam, that was from Steam. So Steam, out of all the games that are available on Mac OS, I have almost 1,000 games on Steam. I had 100 at best, 10% of the library. Currently on my Steam, I have about, at least on this particular machine, I have over 120 games installed. Just on this machine. And most of those aren't Linux native games. So, just saying, that tells you kind of the support level. But keep that in mind. There will be issues that you might run into. It just happens. It's software. I always go into this with the understanding that you've dealt with the Windows, problems, and they just become expectations at this point, annoyances that you have to deal with. Understand that there are going to be certain annoyances going to a different OS. They're just going to be different annoyances. Keep that in mind.
And the good part is I already made a little USB key for it, so I think it's time that we can install it. We have run into our first problem. So immediately the boot key that I made wasn't working. So I'm going to try and go back into Windows and try to make another one, I guess. I don't know. That already though, it's so annoying. This is one of the things that stopped me in the first place from trying this. Okay, so I think it might be a little bit more of a learning curve, but I think I'm just gonna try Manjaro. Like I'm techie. I can understand how to. I can learn how to do something on Manjaro. I think. Hopefully. Let's just hope for the best, I guess. Because Pop! OS doesn't seem to want to work, and it's saying it can't make the boot media because my RGB software is open. The fuck?
So, in fairness, that seems to be more specifically our Windows related issue. Now, I'm going to go back a few minutes because I want to see what he's actually using. Okay, so he's just FAT32 Manjaro GNOME. So it detects the no label disk 428 gigs. So it could be one of two things. It could be the FAT file format that you selected. exFAT is usually generically, when it comes to large drives, the one that most people will recommend you use. It depends. Yeah, so that is what it is. But that specifically right there, that's a Windows issue. As far as Pop! OS not working, I don't know. There's not enough information there, so I can't really rag on him. It could be an issue with the USB. It could be an issue with. I'm assuming you probably used Rufus, maybe Blender. Not Blender, maybe Etcher. So I can't comment on that particular stack of stuff. All I can. Go ahead. Never mind. He's using Rufus. Just looked at the top of the title header. So, could be a formatting issue. Just saying. Again, Windows does not play nice with other file systems. So I've had issues where I'll format a thumb drive. I don't know if I have one currently nearby, but I'll format a thumb drive and it'll show 32 gigs, but then you try to write it as an example, like one of the thumb drives I have, and it'll show, a meg and a half worth of space that's freeable to install on. Windows does weird stuff with drives.
Make the boot media because my RGB software is open. The fuck? Okay, so we're in an OS now. I don't like that I just automatically turned on like the color temperature shift thingy. I forget what it's called, but you guys know what I mean. Like the night mode where it like changes your computer to orange. Like it's
Night color.
3:30 in the afternoon. I don't
Redshift.
And I don't even use it at night anyways. So it's like.
So I know Manjaro does have like a night mode or Redshift or whatever GNOME has it too. Sometimes it depends if it detects time zone. So sometimes the time zone will be wherever you pull the ISO from. I know usually for me, for some reason, I live on Eastern Standard Time, but 90% of the time it puts me on like Pacific time. So it's 3 hours behind. Does weird shit like that. So just, again, software bugs. It doesn't, Windows does it, Mac OS does it, Linux does it. It's all got its thing. But yeah, that's kind of weird. Not gonna lie.
I'm like very confused what's happening right now because. Oh! It's been on the other screen this whole time. That is, let me make this my default screen. Yeah, I was so lost. I don't know. That was annoying. Okay, we are installed. So it's been a little bit since I recorded the last bit of this video, and there were a few things that happened between me filming that and me actually starting to use Linux that kind of made me want to rip my head off, that I kind of just wanted to document real quick. The first thing was, in Manjaro, I couldn't figure out how to do per display scaling. So basically I have a 4K monitor and I have a 1440p monitor, but on Windows it's so easy just to make the scaling look the same. So it's not like one screen has stuff that's super small and then one screen has stuff that's super large. For whatever reason in Manjaro, I just wasn't able to figure that out, and I inevitably just re-downloaded Pop! OS. I don't know why it wasn't working in Manjaro. I don't know, like, if I was doing something wrong. I don't know, like, if I just wasn't doing something I was supposed to be doing. It was just very weird that wasn't something that just worked, I guess. And I guess I'm just, like, kind of spoiled because, like, I'm used to Mac OS and Windows where everything just kind of works. But it seems like such a dumb thing to not have work. But then when I reinstalled Pop! OS, everything worked fine pretty much. Like, it's a very nice, clean user interface, and I do like how it looks. For the most part, I've only really been using like Chrome and stuff, so it's not really anything where it's like I'm blown away yet or anything. It just kind of feels like a normal user experience, which is good. I will say something that I did notice is that some of the colors between Windows and Pop! OS on the same monitor looked off. Like, things just didn't seem super color accurate when I would use Linux.
So color calibration is a thing. A lot of that stuff is usually done in software behind the scenes in Windows and all the other stuff, HDR, etc., etc. So do keep that in mind. Again, it's different OS, different way of doing things. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's just the reality. So that could be, again, could be HDR, could be lacking certain things that Linux would need, etc., etc., etc. Like, the machine I have is supposed to be 100% RGB, sRGB, etc. It's a content creator's laptop, but it's not really 100% because I haven't color calibrated it. But the desaturation could be a lot of different things. It could be stuff with a NVIDIA driver. It could be stuff with, color calibration needed to be done on the monitor. It could input X, Y, and Z thing here. So just, again, it all depends. Nothing's perfect when it comes to tech. But props for continuing to, I don't want to say suffer through it, but for persevering through whatever issues and major annoyances you were having. And I'm not saying distro hopping or jumping to different distros is the right solution, but sometimes the alternative selection might be the right solution.
Linux, but then when I would use Windows or Mac, it would, even if it was on like the same monitor. And that was something that didn't really make much sense to me. I don't know how well it will show up on camera, but it was just like the colors were just off. But overall, I think for people who just need like a basic user interface, maybe they're not gaming. I haven't tried gaming yet, so I'm not gonna like give any like gamer thoughts on it. But for people who need like a basic user interface, I think using something like Pop! OS would be fine for those people. That being said, there is still a lot more that I do want to try out in Linux. I still want to try out gaming. I want to not just do Steam, I want to do like Origin and like other games. I want to try emulation. There's definitely things I want to try out, but it's something that I still kind of need to like figure out and like dabble in. And then of course I'll be making more videos about me trying out Linux as we move on. So that was pretty
Generically, I don't have a lot to rag on. I think this approach is, for the most part, perseverance, willingness and understanding that it's different. It's not going to be the fucking same as Mac OS and Windows. Again, it's different. The selection process can be a little confusing. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of saying, oh, jump a distro, but sometimes that is the right solution. I view distro hopping as making the right selection for the machine. So if I find a distro that just happens to just work on the machine, that's the one I'm gonna use. I'm not gonna cram, circle in the square and use the triangle to bash it in to make it work. This is not how I roll. And that's not how I suggest most normal people that just, like this person, tend to be a tech enthusiast. I'm not going to recommend they go that route. That make the OS fit the machine by default. Not, I'm going to force feed the machine this OS, which is kind of the Windows approach. So yeah, as far as the other stuff, I haven't looked at this dude's channel, but overall, I think he's got at least the right frame of mind. Whether or not he's going to be willing to deal with perhaps some of the issues that you're going to run into gaming, because there are issues, shock, then it all depends. Like promising, but depends. A lot of it depends on the user, as it always does. And their willingness to be open to the approach and understanding that it's going to be different. Again, for me, I'm not stuck in the Adobe sphere, so I honestly don't care. I can jump between applications and all the other stuff. I can go use Kdenlive on Windows, or I can use on Linux. I can use Shotcut. I can use, DaVinci Resolve. I can use insert app here. But generically, the app I use when it comes to editing, specifically Linux stuff, is usually Cinelira GG. That's my preference, but it's only available on, ironically, Linux. So, good video. I'm probably going to maybe dive in to see if he's done any more Linux-related videos and see what his take is. So, other than that, Patreon, Indigala, Humble Bundle, all the affiliate stuff is down below. Appreciate you guys, and I will catch you on the flip. Peace.